Hello, and welcome back to Everyday Writers, your one stop shop for demystifying the writing process. We're here to be helpful guides on your journey to becoming a published author. I'm one of your hosts, Crystal McQueen.
And I'm your other host, Jordan S. Keller. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Today, we're discussing character creation. For many writers, this is the starting place for your novel because without a good character, you won't have a good story. Crystal, who's some of your favorite literary characters?
I like the ones that are super different, right? Like the ones that aren't very super good or, super prim and proper or whatever. So I like the ones who surprise you in the end. I don't know if you've ever read The Handmaid's Tale, but there's a super bad guy in it, Aunt Lydia. She's this woman who is basically like just super abusive to all of these women that are trapped there being forced to procreate against their
Yeah.
will. Well, in the Testaments, the second book, she's actually been fighting Gilead the whole time. And she's done all of these horrible things, things that are very, amoral, but she's done it to bring them down in the end. She's killed people, she's done abuses, she's scarred women, she's tortured them. But all in the end, you could see that she was basically, they had to trust her. And so she did all of this horrible stuff and basically gave up a part of her soul to bring them down. So it was just a really cool way that Margaret Atwood redeemed her character. So anyway, that humanizing the inhuman. There's a book called Clara and the Sun by Ishiguro. I highly recommend it. But basically, it's this robot, and she's solar powered. And all she could think about is like how she can make her human better. Like that's all she wants to do. And in the end, like you're just like feeling for this robot the whole time. So just humanizing the human, surprising you, giving a character what they want and it being way more than they bargained for. So The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, all she wanted to do was get out of her small town and see the world. And she got it. But basically, the price she paid is that no one would remember her. If she left the room and came back, nobody it would be like meeting them for the first time. So those characters that really surprise and enrich you through the story. But what about you, Jordan?
I have a very specific type of book characters. I love the super dark ones with very unfair paths. Kaz Brecker from Six of Crows, Patch from Hush Hush, and of course, who doesn't love Zayden Morrison from Fourth Ring right now? All three are my top three book boyfriends at the moment.
Oh, so can you talk a little bit about, I know that's not the point of this episode, but can you talk a little bit about Fourth Wing? Because that's all I see right now is everybody
Yeah,
being
yeah.
like, check out this book.
It it is it's good. I have complaints about it. I know a lot of people who also have complaints about it, but it's such like a rich story with funny moments and it's got all these tropes and you know they're in there. Like when I'm reading it, I feel like I've just got candy in my mouth. Like I'm gonna get cavities from this, but having so much fun with it. And a cool thing about it for me is I didn't read like war-centric books and throughout this whole it's gonna be a five trilogy, it's this huge war and it's made me read a war book with dragons in it. And so it really opened up my genres. Like maybe I'll pick up another war book with dragons. But but on
I
the flip of dark, oh, sorry.
no.
Oh,
I
I was
was
gonna
just
say,
gonna say the candy stuff. It makes me think of Emily Henry. So she writes romance novels, and her characters are always
oh,
so quippy, and it's funny, and I laugh out loud. Like it's a trope, right? Like
yeah,
it's very a trope. This woman has something happen to her. She's got a new goal. She's gonna meet a guy. They're gonna get together in the end. It's very, but the banter back and forth between those characters, like I devour every single one of her books for no reason that I just love that type of dialogue.
yeah.
So anyway.
Oh, just grinning ear to ear every time I read the book. Uh, Oh, but I also really like hero characters, just ones who like they're at this level and they just need to achieve this goal and they're going to do anything possible and they're the hero in their own mindset. And the three that come to mind are Evangeline from Once a Broken Heart, Gansey from the Race Cycle, and Jude from the Folk of the Air series.
Well, and that makes sense, right? Because you wrote a whole superhero trilogy. So,
I
uh,
did.
Can you talk about that? Like that's a great segue into getting into our topic. Talk about your characterization process for a superhero.
So not just for superheroes, but all of my characters are born from a song in some way. Cinder from the Ashes Over Avalon trilogy, he was inspired by Play with Fire by Sam Tenzin. And Roman, who's the main character for my upcoming science fiction novel Failing Gravity, he was inspired by Concrete Jungle by Bad Omens. And I really like taking the song approach with it because the songs are kind of this raw of the character of who they are, and it lets me kind of springboard into what else is important about them and who they are on a physical level, on an emotional level. And once I have that rawness, I can start expanding through their backstories, through their goals, what they want to be focusing on, and what's important to them. And I do spin that mindset of them of what they want, what they need, and how are they going to achieve it. And I do this to make sure that they have a personal stake in the story because you can just have a character who wants to save the world, but why do they save the world? What's it truly mean to them? And my little trick I keep in my back pocket is I use the five secrets technique. And it's before you start writing the novel, you write down five secrets about your character that no one's going to know, but it'll come up through your writings. So a good example is Roman's favorite food is spaghetti. And he never flat out says that, but throughout the novel, you'll see him always moving towards Italian eccentric foods. And so you just kind of pick up that about him without him having to say it.
That is super cool. I love that. I hadn't heard of that approach to characterization. Is spaghetti your favorite food?
It is, and that's why it's Romans.
That's amazing, though. I love that. And you talked about music. So in this current novel that I'm writing, I had never used music as a way to keep a story moving, but I created a whole playlist of different feelings that different chapters gave me, whether, Ellie was super motivated or, she was ready to conquer the world, or she just feels like her whole world is in a disaster. And so I actually listen to that playlist all the time because it's constantly making me think of my book. And that's all thanks to you. I love the playlist idea.
So welcome.
I got butchered on Facebook though, because I asked, I sent out a message and I was like, hey, how many of you guys create playlists? Because this is such a good idea. I'd never done it before. And people would say stuff like, why would you create a playlist for your book? Like nobody's going to read at the same pace. Like, oh,
It's not for you.
well, okay, that's not what I meant. And then somebody else was like, I have to write in absolute silence and everybody should. And I was like, everybody should. Interesting. Tell
Everyone
me
should.
more.
Oh, they need to listen to our podcast. Everyone writes differently.
Everybody writes differently, which I
Uh,
mean, you talked about yours starting with a song. Well, mine
yeah,
usually starts with a character and a dilemma. So the very first novel that I wrote, which I'm going to go back to someday,
keep saying
I know. I'm a very slow writer. I write a whole lot with not a lot of substance. But
gotcha.
anyway, the scene that I pictured, it was basically kind of like a daydream-esque type of thing. But this woman's dog falls over a cliff and gets caught in the brambles on the side of a cliff face. And the whole scene is her just trying to get this dog back because it's all she has left in the world. And so then I started to work backward. Like, why is this dog the only thing she has? And then, like, why is she carrying this stuff? And why can't she get help? And a whole world and a whole story built off of that one scene.
Yeah,
And so, like, for me, it's always a character and a dilemma. Like, what's their mindset? Are they direct and determined? Are they amoral? Like, Aunt Lydia in the Testaments. Um, what's holding them back? Is it the world around them? Is it their own, like, misgivings about something, their own lack of confidence? Do they think they don't deserve what they want? Like, did they have something happen in the past and they think they just deserve what's happening to them now? Are they physically incapable of getting what they need? And so when I'm developing characterization, I'm trying to understand all of the experiences that they've had that impact what they want. And so I have an elaborate character sketch before I even put the pen to the page. I don't recommend anybody doing that because I write these super elaborate scenes that, are whole chapters, and then I end up keeping like 500 words of it, maybe. But
but
that's how
you
I
you got that all in your head, so it makes writing that character so much easier, I bet.
That's just it. Like that's how I figure out what my character wants. So I don't know all the things about my character like until I start writing those elaborate scenes. It's like, oh, that's
Yeah.
new, and I'll add it to their character sketch. Which, throughout my writing process, my characters evolve. Like they become different, not necessarily different people, but more rounded people as I write these scenes that a reader will never read. But like, what about you? Like, how does your character evolve as you write? Do they?
Yeah, so besides the natural arc of the character striving to achieve their goal and being faced with that opportunity to change and whether they take it or not, when I'm writing, I'm more focused on keeping the character true to their voice throughout the novel, especially like if I take breaks in between writing, the character's voice might change completely and I'll kind of lose touch of who they were in the beginning. So
Mhm.
whenever I write, I always have sticky notes on my computer, and it'll be like the five, yeah, I love sticky notes. Um, like five keywords of who that character is. So like Abigail from Ashes Over Avalon, it was determined, reckless, and fierce. And so whenever I was writing her, I kept those right in my head. And then I also referenced the Emotional Thesaurus books by Angela Ackerman and Becca Pugsley. Those are my go-to cheat sheets, and they're just great for knowing an emotion your character feels, but having unique ways to show it on the page, besides just sort of rehashing all your usuals that you do.
Yeah.
Um, and then my favorite thing, I always have in the back of my head, how am I going to make things worse for my characters?
Well, that's the hard part, right? Like how do
Yes.
you make your character grow? Because i- as you start to write these characters, they become a part of you. Like you don't want anything bad to happen to them, and you're almost like this, omniscient God that could fix everything for them and make their whole life easy. But that's not very interesting. It doesn't even make a really good story. And so, one of the key things about characterization is that a character always needs to have the opportunity to grow. They don't have to grow. They can have the call and decline it. They can be like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to become a better person. I'm not going to save the world. I'm going to sit down here and not try to get back with my family. I'm just going to let things happen. But it's all about that character's choice. You put a very difficult situation in front of them, and then they have to react. Um, and so if your character doesn't achieve their goal, even though they've been working on it for 300 pages, how they handle it and move on from letting that goal go, even if they don't achieve it, that's a big part of your story. It's a big part of who people are, who humans are, you know? So, Jordan, when
Crystal.
you're writing books, how do you go about setting obstacles and conflicts for your characters?
So I use the yes, but approach, and I have to give all the credit to a writer friend of mine whose name is Josh. He taught me this technique. Yes, your character achieves their goal, but at what cost? Nothing should come easy. Everything should have a consequence. So yes, your character got this piece of information they needed, but they had to give up a piece of information they were trying to keep. Or yes, your character was able to progress the plot, but they lost a friend in the way. And these moments of loss help make the victory that much sweeter at the end. And like you mentioned, it lets your character sit in this disappointment of them like not choosing the goal or not choosing that change. And so like in Wildfire, spoiler alert, one thing, Abigail had it too good for too long. And so when we got to that third book, I really realized I had to start taking from her so she could achieve that goal and it be satisfying to the reader.
Yeah.
Uh,
I just finished reading a book called The Measure, and it's a really fascinating book about uh, overnight, everybody gets a box with a string in it, and you can choose to open the box and look inside, or you can choose to ignore it and put it aside. And inside is a string, and it basically tells you how much longer you have to live. And
oh,
so it's told from multiple different perspectives, and everybody has goals and things that they're trying to achieve. But there's this one woman in it named Amy who, all her life, she's fantasized about having the perfect family life, right? A husband, kids, living in, Upper Manhattan in a specific building. Um, and when she meets Ben, he's got a much shorter string than she has. She chose not to look at her string. She just assumed the whole time that her string was very, very long. And so she really wrestled with like, can I just be with this guy for, 12 years? We can have kids, but like, can I have kids knowing that he's going to die? So she was very struggling and wrestling with all of this throughout the book. And eventually she settled on I'm going to marry this guy. Well, at the end of his 12 years, he's got some kind of cancer and he's dying. And she's like, it's okay. We prepared for this. We're ready for it. But what actually happens is they get in a car accident and die together. And
Oh,
so that's the cost, right? You just
yeah.
talked about it. Like you achieved your goals, but at what cost? And so, I highly recommend this book. Like there's so many parts of it that I was just like, what would you do in this situation? But again, I like the characters that are like so unique and different. And, this woman who's got this fairy tale mindset just found her perfect mate and they got to die together. So
Would you open your box?
would I, that's a question that I had for Bill. Would I open my box? And I was like, I just need my string to be shorter than yours.
Oh, oh.
That's it. I mean, that's fine, like you can live forever and that's great, but like I don't want to live without you. So I need my
Yeah.
string to, and like I don't know. Like, would you get somebody else to open the box for you?
I think I'd look, but I couldn't tell anyone.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Interesting.
I mean, I
Okay.
think you would notice, like, Jordan, you've traveled so much this year. Like, oh yeah, don't worry about that.
Well, okay, I'm not going to talk any more about this book, but like, you're talking about traveling and stuff like that. Like some people quit their jobs. And that was probably my biggest critique about the book. You talk about the book so interesting and
Yeah.
if you keep make it interesting enough, people aren't going to wonder about the world around you. And that's true. But instrumentally, part of the book was these people are quitting their jobs and living their life differently. But I'm like, with what money? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
like you still have to eat. You still have to be able to, do stuff. And America's not going to be any less in debt when this magically
No.
happens overnight. So anyway, that was my big critique about the book, but I absolutely loved it.
What a cool
So,
concept.
oh, it really is. Um, well, this is all the time that we have on this episode of Everyday Writers. Thank you so much for letting us be part of your writing journey. And just remember, characters need to have goals outside of saving the world.
Make sure you keep your character consistent in the final product. You might discover things along the way, so double check.
And be mean to your characters. They need to grow. The story and your readers will thank you.
And join us next time for Writing Communities, where we're going to talk about the importance of having one, how our group was founded, and be your guide on having your own writing retreat. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it, and let us know who your favorite book character is. We'll see you next time.
And don't forget, every day is a good day to write. Bye.